Thank you very much for coming today. My name is Lars. First of all, could you maybe send something in the chat if you're hearing me correctly, so I know that I will be understood while talking. Just type like yes or something, and I know that it's all correct. Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll get started right now. Hopefully, you can also see my screen. If not, please let me know. Today, we'll be going through the first 3 weeks of the material. So about half of the course will be discussed today, and all exam material will come by, including a lot of practice questions. So a bit about myself. My name is Lars, and I've done the same bachelor's as you did, specifically the direction of international business administration at Radboud. Right now, I'm doing a master's in international management in Prague. And next semester, I will be going to Chile for the remaining part of my master's. I've been working with Athena for over 3 years now. I started as a tutor and as an author, and now I'm also doing the content management for business administration at Radboud. So that's a bit about myself. Then what we will be doing today. First of all, what is an exam training exactly? Because I suppose it's the first time that you'll be participating in such thing. In exam training, we'll be going through all the material, or in this case, half the material of the course. And the goal of this exam training is that you will understand the material and be able to applicate it also in practice. So at the end of the training, hopefully you'll feel more confident with the material and have a better understanding of what the exam could possibly look like, and just have a bit more faith to yourself that the exam will become all right. Okay, then a few things before. I would love it if people would turn on their camera, so I'm not talking to a black screen for 2.5 hours. Also, if you have questions, feel free to just unmute yourself so I can immediately hear you. And also, feel free to use the chat. I have the chat in my screen, so anytime, any question, just let me know. And also, if you need a break, just let me know, and we'll have a short break in the training. If there are no questions so far, we'll get started with the first materials. So we will go through all the weeks, and in between the weeks, we'll be having practice questions. So after each topic, we'll be discussing some questions. And at the end of all 3 weeks, we'll be discussing all the material through each other, and we're doing questions across all the weeks. So to see if you really understood the theory and are able to implement it in the practice questions. The first 3 theoretical weeks will take about 2 hours, and then the final half an hour will be just practicing. So I have a good feeling about what it looks like. Then you might be wondering what the exam will look like. And to be completely 100% honest, we do not know exactly, because this course is a new course and it changed a lot compared to last year's the study materials. But we do have a lot of experience at the Nijmegen School of Management. So we do believe that we can have some estimation of what the exam possibly could look like. And we've analyzed a few past exams of other courses, which cover similar topics like this course about responsible organization. And we've implemented a lot of those questions into this exam training as well. So about half of the questions you'll be seeing during this training are actual past exam questions of other courses that are outdated now. For example, courses like ethics or introduction to business, those kind of courses, which we don't have anymore right now. Those exam questions have been used for this training as they have similar topics in mind. Okay, then I will want to start immediately with the first practice question to see how good your pre-knowledge is already. So what I would like to ask you is read the question, and when you've read it correctly and are ready to answer the question, send it to me privately via the chat. And when enough people have answered me the question, I'll discuss the answer and we'll see if it's correct. So take your time to read the question, and when you're ready, please send me the answer via direct message. Okay, I see some contrasting answers, but most people are saying C, the ontology. Oh, and that's indeed correct. The ontology is the opposite of utilitarianism, and the ontology believes that there's an emphasis on adherence to rules and duties, regardless of the outcome. So where deontology says we have to look at the intention and the action itself, Utilitarianism says, no, we don't look at the action itself, but we look at the outcome of the action. So a utilitarianism theorist would say an action is inherently good if it gives more joy to people than pain to people, so they look at the outcome. And the ontology says, no, we have to look at the action itself, and if there's something inherently wrong with the action. Most people hear correctly, but we'll go more into the depth of this theory later in this training. And now we'll start with lecture one, which is about the basics. It's very general. What is responsible organization and what is the theory behind it? First of all, this is the most important topic of the entire course about multiple value creation. That's about the triple bottom line, the triple bottom line of sustainability. And this one says you have to create value for the environment, for the society, and for the economy. So when you have a company, you're not just trying to create as much value as possible just for the shareholders and just for the people who are running the business, but you should also try to create value for society and for the environment. And if you have all those three values aligned, then you get sustainable development. You have like a sustainable operating business that is not just creating value for one out of three of those pillars. And a good example with this is the commercials by Apple. Apple is really trying to highlight how they are not just trying to make profits, but also trying to do something good for the environment, illustrating that they're trying to create value for both environments, people, and profit. Whether this is true or not, we'll go more into that later because some businesses might try to look green and try to look like they are doing multiple value creation, but in reality, they're not really focused on all three of those and are mainly occupied with just the profit part. Then we have a practice question about this. How does the triple bottom line approach to value creation challenge the profit maximization strategies in management? So read the answers carefully, and then about half a minute, we'll go to the answer. Okay, already getting a bunch of answers. And indeed, most of you are correct. It's answer C. By integrating social, environmental, and economic performance, requiring managers to balance stakeholders needs beyond financial returns. You don't look at just the financial, not just the economic profits, but also at the performance, society, and the performance of the environment. Very well, everyone. Then a concept introduces one of the professional management versus unprofessional management. And the concept professional might be a bit confusing here, but professional means doing good for society and the world. So you are a professional manager if you not just do your job to make as much money as possible, but also try to do it to benefit society and the world. And the opposite of this is when being an unprofessional manager is when you're just focused on profit maximization and don't have any intent to do something good for the world and the environment. And a good example here is when you can, for example, be a professional manager. When you are a doctor, for example, and you decide to perform surgery on someone who doesn't necessarily need it, then you are an unprofessional manager. You're just performing a surgery because you believe that you will make a lot of money out of it and are not doing it to help the patient. So then you're a unprofessional manager because you're not doing it for the benefit of society and the world without self-interest, but you are mainly doing it for self-interest. So that's the difference between being a professional versus an unprofessional manager. And we have another practice question with that. Which statement best captures the primary ethical distinction between professional and unprofessional management? So please read the answer options again, and when you know the answer, send it to me in the chat. Okay, I see a lot of B's. And indeed, in unprofessional management maximizes short-term profit without concern for long-term social impact, while professional management integrates ethical, responsible, and sustainable practices to balance stakeholder interest. Very well. And codes of conduct. Codes of conduct are a very important part of this. And the codes of conduct are a set of rules within a profession or an organization that everyone has to adhere to. It's not legally binding, but that's just more a informal, formalized set of rules which people should adhere to and should listen to. For example, with doctors, you have the Hippocratic Oath, which means that if you become a doctor, you put down this oath saying that you will, for example, not perform surgery on someone who doesn't need it and will not harm someone while performing any of your medical acts. So those kind of codes of conduct give a kind of guideline how to act ethically and how to make sure that you are benefiting society and environment next to just your profits. And codes of conduct are mainly seen with very big multinational enterprises, and they make those code of conducts, especially when they look at global supply chain. For example, big companies like Zara or H&M, they have codes of conduct regarding their child labor policies or maybe also slave labor policies, because it's very difficult to control those things at the end of the supply chain. So they create those codes of conduct to make sure that throughout the entire supply chain, and none of those things are happening. Then a practice question again. Codes of conduct serve as foundational tools for responsible organizations. Which of the following is a limitation of codes of conduct in practice? This is more of an application question. We haven't directly discussed it, so I'm curious if you will have the correct answer here. Okay, I see some B, I see some D, even some A. Very different answers, but the right answer was indeed B. Codes of conduct, they are not legally binding and therefore also not specific, and they apply to many different aspects within the organization or even an entire occupation. And this results in that they are very written in very vague terms, so you can also interpret them in many different kind of ways, leading to this kind of ambiguity. So that's one problem with codes of conduct. Um, A is not correct because it's not about legal compliance. Very often codes of conduct go beyond what the legal minimum is and are actually doing the extra step. C is also not correct because every single person in the organization can be affected by codes of conduct, not just the top management, but even lower management or just operational employees have to occupy with those codes of conduct. An example here, you can think of a daycare worker. Even a daycare worker is complying with a code of conduct regarding how to take care of children and stuff. So in all levels of the organization, codes of conduct are important. And finally, D, it's also not correct because they ensure that organization engage in greenwashing because they're not necessarily linked to greenwashing. It can be closely related because people do try to greenwash, of course, but the codes of conduct are trying to prevent greenwashing. So it's not a good relationship that greenwashing is the effect of the codes of conduct. Then, what exactly is greenwashing? Greenwashing basically means that an organization is falsely representing itself as environmental friendly. Think, for example, about Shell. Shell is a very big oil company, and Shell puts a lot of attention and focus on sustainability. And so you maybe think like, hey, Shell is doing quite a good job. They're opening wind parks, they have solar panels, but in reality, they're not sustainable at all because their main business revenue stream is, of course, still oil. So greenwashing is when a company who's absolutely not sustainable and not environmental friendly tries to look green throughout certain actions they are doing. And I have a practice question for that. Greenwashing has been a significant concern in sustainable management. Which scenario is the best example of greenwashing? Take your time to read again. Okay. I see a lot of B. And exactly, that's a very right answer. A corporation claiming carbon neutrality by purchasing carbon offsets without reducing its direct emission. That's a good example of how a corporation tries to look green, but in reality isn't. Then we have four types of professional and unprofessional managers. And we use this kind of skill to divide those four types. The first skill is the distinction between a low professional management conduct and a high professional management conduct. And the second skill is the one between a low motive of service to studies, science, and society, and a high motive of service to society and planet. First, the professional management conduct. That means whether or not you are expertised and are good knowledgeable about how to behave professional and are doing so and are showing that by showing that expertise. Well, the motive to actually serve the planet is a different thing because you're actually motivated to do the right thing. So it's a difference between knowing what is right and actually doing right. Because when you're a professional, you both have the knowledge on how to be professional, and you are in fact professional because you are motivated to do the right thing. When you're a well-behaved unprofessional, then you do have the knowledge on how to do it, and you do have the knowledge on what professional conduct is like, and you are showing professional conduct towards the interactions you have with others. But at the same time, even though you are well-behaved, you don't really have any motivation to do good to society and planet. So you're well-behaved unprofessional. When you're an unprofessional, you score bad on both. You're and not trying to do so. You're not even motivated to do right. And you also have no expertise on how to show professional management conduct and how to be professional. And the well-intentioned unprofessional, that's the one that has not the appropriate conduct, maybe doesn't have the right knowledge on how to do it, but is motivated on being professional and wants to serve the planet and the society. And I hope that you have all gotten that because we have a practice question with that. Which of the following is the most accurate reflection of the four types of unprofessional managers, particularly in relation to ethical decision making? So take some time to read it and let me know what you think. Okay, I get a variety of different answers, but I feel like the majority says A, and that's correct. We here see someone who, an unprofessional manager is someone who focuses on short-term profitability, but occasionally considering the needs of society. Sorry, I think wrong. A, I mean. A well-intentioned professional acts ethically, but lacks appropriate manager expertise. So if you go back, you see that the well-intentioned manager is here. So you do not have the expertise on how to have professional management conduct, but at the same time, you do have the motivation to do correct to planet and society. So that fits best with A because you act ethically, because you want to do good, but you don't have the right management skills to really show that conduct. So A is here the correct answer. Okay, then we go to old world versus new world management because we see a big distinction between how old management is doing right now and how the newer generations are doing. The old generations are still very much occupied with fossil industries and they're still harming the planet. And this is kind of inhibiting our progress. While at the same time, the new world management is emphasizing society by actively tackling urgent issues like climate change. And this old world management and the new world management are always in contrast and always fighting each other. Because of this conflict, you can see here, in this boat that is illustrated here. Is there a question? No? Okay. You can see here that the drivers who are trying to get the boat forward are being inhibited by the inhibitors of the old world management. So it's a boat that can go both ways. And as long as the drivers are going faster than inhibitors, the new world management is leading to positive change. Then the three dimensions of responsible management. We already talked about the triple bottom line, and the triple bottom line is all part of sustainability. But sustainability itself is again also part of a typology, namely the one of ethical, responsibility, and sustainability, ERS. Because you have to be ethical, you have to make the right decisions and be moral in doing so. You have to be responsible. If you do something wrong, you have to acknowledge it was your mistake and you have to try to fix it. And you have to be sustainable. So you have to have the triple bottom line, the social, environmental, and economic value. And if you're balancing all three of those, then you are being a responsible manager. Okay, we have a practice question with this, a more an application question. The banana industry is often cited as a case study in ethical management. Which ethical dilemma is most commonly associated with the banana supply chain? Okay, I see a lot of A and B and also C. And the right answer was B. Within the banana industry specifically, and this goes more into the triple bottom line, farmers are forced to adopt environmentally damaging practices to meet economic demands of larger corporations, creating a conflict between profitability and sustainability. They want to have both good value for environment and for economy, but because the big corporations are putting pressures on them, um, because we're putting pressure on them, they have to comply with lower environmental standards. I see a question here. Can't A also be correct? Companies must choose between using genetically modified seeds or more expensive organic options. In this case, A is not correct because there's no clear dilemma between environment, social, and profit. Because you cannot say that, for example, genetically modified seeds are not ethical, not responsible, or not sustainable, and also that they're not ecological, sustainable for society, or sustainable for profits. So in this case, A is not correct because there is no specific, explicit dilemma illustrated between that triple bottom line or between that ERS topology. So I hope that that's clear. If not, please let me know, Sami. Then the next question. In the context of responsible management, what is the most significant challenge in integrating the three dimensions of ER and S into everyday business practice? Okay, first answers are getting in already. And most of you are indeed having the correct answer. It's B. And why you could recognize that B was the right answer, you should always look for the conflict because we're trying to balance the ethical, responsible, and sustainability part. And if you're trying to balance something, you should always recognize that there can be conflict in between of those. Just as within the banana case, there's always a conflict between one of those dimensions. You want to be sustainable, but also be ethical. How can you balance those things out? That's the most difficult part of integrating those three dimensions. Then the IPO model, I will go shortly into this. I don't believe this is really an important topic of the course, but the IPO model is about input, processes, and output. So when you are a manager, you have management input. For example, you want to achieve a certain goal or you have certain resources you want to use for something. Then it goes through the process. So depending upon how able the manager is and how much expertise he has, it goes through the process. And then eventually there will be an output, for example, increased performance or the goal will be achieved and yeah, the outcome will be reached. So you have an input, for example, the goal, the resources, it goes through the process depending upon internal capabilities and expertise, and that leads to a certain outcome. For example, when your goal is to increase profit by 10%, but the manager has really no expertise in how to do so, then the output will probably be that the goal will not be reached. Then, management innovation is often characterized by departure from traditional management practices. Which of the following best represents a driver of management innovation? I see a note from Adam for triple bottom line questions. It is good to look for the three words in the answers. Yes, very well. And also make sure that multiple words can be used. For the economic one, it can of course be economy, but also profits, shareholders. For society, it can also be community or anything other related to people. And for environment, it can also be ecology or maybe even climate change or nature. So make sure to not just focus on the words economy, environment, and society, but try to look at as broad as possible. And C, indeed, is the correct answer. Thanks everyone for giving the correct answer. C is the only one that is not an inhibitor, but a driver towards good change. Because the inhibitor is the one keeping the boat towards the old way, and the driver is pushing the boat forward. Then, reinventing management. There's been a reading by 35 leading management specialists who have given a recommendation on how we have to change traditional management to a more new critical approach. Because we used to have very simple theories focused purely on efficiency, but these specialists now say we should get rid of just the efficiency focus, but should focus more on a multiple value creation society. So the first thing they recommend is that work should serve as a higher purpose. So this is very much related to the triple bottom line. It should serve a higher purpose of having a societal goal besides for just a economic goal. And the second one is it should fully integrate the ideas of community and citizenship into management systems. So again, this says we shouldn't just look at the shareholders, but at all stakeholders. All stakeholders are relevant when conducting business or when being a manager. And finally, we should rebuild the philosophical foundations of management, meaning that we shouldn't just look at efficiency, but should also look at more other fields like biology, political science, and get knowledge from those fields in our ideas about management. Because the traditional management theories were very much focused on how can we be more efficient, how can we improve profits, and by going towards more other disciplines as well, so for example, maybe even social sciences or psychology, we will be a very more broad manager than just the one focusing on efficiency. Then the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals are developed by the UN and give a clear guidance on how we should go towards a more sustainable world. And here again, you can see the triple bottom line between economy, society, and environment. And each of those Sustainable Development Goals targets one or more of those parts of the triple bottom line. And very good to realize here, and I think when you look at the different goals here to the right, it's not just about climate change and improving the nature, so to say. Sustainability is really just about having a long-term focus and trying to do good for the long term for all kind of parts of the world. So no poverty is a part of that. Of course, climate change is a part of that, but also even a good health and well-being of people is part of that. Anything that's related to doing good in the long term. Then management practices. Management practices are composed of three different elements. First of all, meanings. And meanings are about values, judgments, or underlying ideas that we have while conducting management. When I am doing my job as a manager, I'm doing it with a certain thought in my head, what I think is important. That's what meanings is about. The materials, that's the stuff used in the practices, such as planes to travel, of products sold, of technologies and tools used. So when I'm a manager and I'm delegating some work and I'm using Excel, then Excel here is the material that I'm using as a manager. And finally, competencies, that is the management practitioner's abilities necessary for successfully engaging in a practice. So when I'm a manager, I'm doing certain things because I think it's important. That's the meaning behind this. Everything that I'm using is called the materials. And the ability of me to actually do well in my position as a manager is related to my competencies. Then the modes of management, we'll go more in depth to this later, but the book is divided upon different modes, like organizing, following, deciding, communicating, and these different modes altogether compromise what we define as management. And later in lecture 3, we'll go more into depth on organizing, deciding, and following. And we also see some classical theories there, which are very much used in management still nowadays. This was already the first lecture. I hope that the first lecture was clear to everyone. So I would now say we take a short break so everyone can refresh, get something to drink, and I'll see you guys again in 10 minutes past 12:30. So at 12:40. See you. Okay, I hope everyone is refreshed. In a few seconds, we will be continuing to the next lecture. But first of all, I got a few questions regarding specifically the exam preparation for your first exams. And after the second lecture, we have a short break again, and I'll be discussing specifically that. I'll be telling you how I usually prepare for my exams and how I believe is the best way to tackle those multiple choice exams at business administration. So we'll be going into that later. But first, we'll be going through lecture two, the one of dimensions. And this is mainly a lecture about the ethics behind responsible organization. And it's very closely related to a course we'll be having later this period or later this year about business ethics. So let's go ahead. First of all, you can have a dilemma of ethical judgment. And here you can have a dilemma whether something is ethical or not. And whether you make the right decision in this depends upon two factors. The factor of ethical judgment itself, meaning is your ethical judgment clear or unclear, and the one of moral motivation. Let's start with the one of ethical judgment. Ethical judgment means whether you are having a clear image in your mind what is good and what is wrong. So when you know what is right and wrong, your ethical judgment is strong. So when you're opposing a dilemma, and you have option A and option B, and you know that option B is the correct thing to do, and option A is the unmoral thing to do, then your ethical judgment is clear. And moral motivation means, okay, well, ethical judgment says, okay, I know what's good and what's wrong, but the moral motivation means, do I also know, do I also have the motivation to do the right thing? Because if my moral motivation is low, I might know what the right thing is, but I might not have the motivation to also do the right thing. So we'll start with the upper left a dilemma, the genuine dilemma. And this one is the one where you have an unclear ethical judgment, but you do have the motivation to do the right thing. This means that I do not know what the right thing is, but I do want to do the right thing. So here my dilemma is sincere. I want to do the right thing. My motivation is high, but I just simply do not know exactly what the right thing is here. Then the one in the upper right corner, the no problem problem. In this case, I understand very well what is right and what is wrong. So my ethical judgment is clear, and I also have the motivation to do the right thing. So I know what's right, and I want to do the right thing, so there is no problem. Then the one in the left below, the moral laxity. Here my ethical judgment is unclear. I do not know what's wrong and what's good, but my motivation to do the right thing is also not there. So I'm very lax. My moral laxity is very high. Then the compliance problem, the final one. Here, my moral motivation is very low. So I do not want to do the right thing, but at the same time, I do know what the right thing is. So when choosing between good and right, I know what the good thing is, but I'm choosing to not do the good thing. So I have a compliance problem. Then we're having a little practice question with that. So please read the question again. And when you know the answer, send me a private message with the correct answer. And then we'll go to the answer when enough people have texted me what they believe the answer should be. Okay, let's see a few different kind of answers coming in. Okay, so first of all, we see a manager who clearly understands the ethical implications. If I understand what is wrong and what is right, then my ethical judgment is in the clear. So it can either be a no problem, or a compliance problem. So I understand the ethical implications, but I am not willing to do the right thing. In other words, my ethical judgment is very good, but my motivation to do this is not there. Meaning that B is the right answer. A high ethical judgment, the low moral motivation. Let's see, question coming in again. Can you expect questions like this on the exam? Yes, you certainly can. I'm not sure if this question is from an old exam, but about half of all the questions we're doing today are from old exams. So not from specific this course because this course is new, but for other similar courses. So yes, this level is something you can expect on the exam, but please keep in mind, it could also be the case that you wouldn't get the ethical judgment and moral motivation part on the exam, but that would just give you the words genuine dilemma or compliance problem or moral laxity. So make sure that you know all different ways of addressing this kind of problems. Then different domains of business ethics. Uh, Yes, Teun. The exam is only multiple choice question. That's correct. But then business administration for the next 3 years, I think you will only be having like 2 or 3 exams that will have open questions. All the other exams will be just multiple choice. But don't make the mistake of thinking that it's easier because a lot of multiple choice exam questions can be very hard, especially in the second year. They get very specific and very difficult. So don't be too excited for the closed questions. Then, the domains of business ethics. Business ethics is the study of ethical problems in business. And we make a distinction between normative ethics and descriptive ethics. Normative ethics, they assess what is morally right or wrong based on moral philosophy. So moral ethics, normative ethics make a distinction between good and right. And descriptive ethics, they explain the behavior of people while making those choices. So where normative ethics already says A is good and B is not good, descriptive ethics shows what people do and the decisions they make. Do they choose for A or do they choose for B? And normative ethics can be further divided into a few theories, which we already discussed completely at the beginning of this training. And the biggest one are consequentialism and deontology. Consequentialism says that moral decisions should be based on the outcomes. And the goal is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. So an action is inherently good when the outcome of that action is good for as many people as possible. So in this case, you could either justify murder. When we kill someone and the outcome of that murder is that more people are happy than before, then that action in itself is a good thing. And the ontology disagrees with this. The ontology claims that the action itself should be good, and the intentions of the action should be good, and what you're doing to get there is the most important part, not the outcome of the action. So if, for example, take the example of the death punishment, in the United States, it's legal to do the death punishment. And here they, for example, use the consequentialism reasoning. They say someone did something bad and it caused a lot of pain to people, but when we kill that person, more people will have pleasure because the person is not there anymore. In Netherlands, the death punishment is not legal, and we have more a deontology approach. We believe that murder is always bad. It's an inherently bad thing. So we don't do it because it's wrong to do so. Those are two different approaches to come to a conclusion whether a certain action is good or false, or good or right. Good thing to do or the right thing to do, or the bad thing to do. And a good example here is the trolley example. The trolley example is the example where you have two options. A train is going directly on 5 different people. And when he continues to drive, he will kill those 5 persons. But you are standing there with the question mark and you have a switch in your hand. And you can make the train go to the other track, meaning that not 5 people, but only 1 person will be killed. And the question here is, would you do it? Can you do it? Is it morally okay to do it? And if you look at the ontology, they would say no. You are the person flipping the switch, and because you flip the switch, the train now goes directly off to that 1 person, making your actions concluding into the murder of a person. So the action itself to flip that switch is, according to deontology, inherently wrong. Although the other theory, the consequentialism or the utilitarianism theory, claims, well, if you flip the switch, then not 5 people will be killed, but only 1 person will be killed. So because of it, more pleasure and less pain. So consequentialism says it is inherently a good thing to flip the switch. And it's also a long-running argument what to do. And this is what philosophers have been arguing for a long time about. And you will learn more about this also in the business ethics course. But for now, just understanding the difference between consequentialism and deontology is enough for the exam. So I hope you understand it all correctly. And we'll see now with this practice question, which of the following best contrasts consequentialism and deontology? You can type it again in the chat when you know it. Okay. I see a lot of B's. And very well, deontology prioritizes following rules regardless of the outcome, while consequentialism considers the outcome as the sole basis for moral decision. Deontology is about the action itself and the intentions behind it, and consequentialism is about the outcome of that action. Then, descriptive ethics. Normative ethics, we're about what is good, what is right. And normative ethics have theories about this is right and this is wrong. And descriptive ethics look then specifically at, okay, we know what's good and right according to normative ethics, but what is the actual behavior happening here? So it analyzes why people do or do not do the right thing. So it's not about A is right and B is wrong. No, it's about why people choose for A or choose for B. And a practice question for that, which of the following best explains the difference between normative ethics and descriptive ethics? You can send it again in the chat. Okay, I see a lot of B. And indeed, descriptive ethics focus on how people actually behave, and normative ethics about on how you should behave. Then the three elements of ethical behavior. We have awareness, judgment, and behavior. The first step is awareness. You should recognize that something is an ethical dilemma. Then you go to judgment, your ability to make the right decision based upon your recognition of having an ethical dilemma. So first you see a dilemma, you are aware of the fact that there is a dilemma. And the second step is going to making the right decision in the dilemma. And the third step is making the correct behavior because of the judgment you have made. So for example, with the trolley example, first of all, when you have the switch there, you should be aware of the fact, okay, here I have an ethical dilemma. Should I flip the switch or not? And the second step is the judgment. You judge in your mind about what is the right thing to do, flipping the switch or not flipping the switch. Then eventually you make the conclusions, okay, I believe it's ethical to flip the switch. And then the behavior you have is the actual physical movement of switching that, flipping that switch because of your judgment. Then a bit about ethical management. First of all, moral excellence. That's when you are behaving ethically above average. So you're making more right decisions than wrong decisions. Moral bankruptcy is kind of the opposite of that. That's when you are a company and have done so many unethical things that you kind of lost your license to operate. For example, a business caught in continuous scandals like fraud or environmental harm. When you keep doing wrong upon wrong upon wrong, and you've done so many wrongs in your life, then you lost your license to operate and you're morally bankrupt. And finally, an ethics program. An ethics program is a set of tools to help a company maintain ethical behavior and build an ethical culture. For example, when you hire new employees, you could have a training video that they have to watch on how to teach them how to behave ethically while making decisions. I see a question from Yara. Will this presentation be recorded? Yes, but I do have to say that yesterday the recording didn't work. So in case that the recording doesn't work again, then there will be no recording. But hopefully the recording works and we can share it afterwards. And the PowerPoint will also be shared. Then, this is a piece of psychology, the assessment of ethical value creation. And you start with the pre-conventional level when you are a little kid. At this time, you do not have your own moral compass, but you are making your decisions based upon punishment and rewards. You are listening to your parents because you don't want to be punished and that you want a reward. Or a better example, maybe like pets. Your dog is listening to you basically just because he wants a treat and he doesn't want you to scream. And then the conventional level, at this point, you are not just listening to rewards and punishments, but you are doing something because that's what others are expecting from you. So we are doing actions that benefit the society. And for example, when you're in school, you are behaving well because you know that that's what the thing is expected by your teacher. Not per se anymore because you're scared of the punishment or you want rewards. No, because you know that that's the expected thing to do. And then the final level, the principled level, or the post-convention level, at this point, you have developed your own moral compass. And you now know yourself what is good and wrong, and you have your own decisions in making it. You're not doing something because of punishment or rewards, not because you think that's what other people are expecting from you. No, you're doing something because you believe that that's the right thing to do. That's the principled level. Then the stakeholder assessment. Stakeholders are everyone who have a stake into your organization, from customers to suppliers to employees, or maybe even the community. And we make a distinction between primary and secondary stakeholders. The primary stakeholders have a direct relationship with you. So they're specifically the customers and the employees. And the secondary stakeholders, they have a more indirect relationship to you. For example, NGOs putting pressure on you to behave more ethical or more green, or the community around you who you might be harming with your actions, such as pollution of the neighborhood. Then the prioritization. How do you know what stakeholder is more important than another stakeholder? And we have a framework for that which we use, which is called the pull framework, the power, urgency, and legitimacy framework. And the pull framework says if a stakeholder is so important that he has 2 or 3 of those elements, then you should definitely start immediately listening to that stakeholder. So stakeholders can have power over you, they can be legitimate, and they can be urgent. For example, the tax services, when they come to you and they say, you have to file your taxes now and pay us money, you will probably immediately listen to the stakeholder because they have the power to punish you, they have the power to give you fines or maybe even get you out of business. They are legit, they are a real organization, and if you don't listen to them, the actions and the consequences can be serious. And they're also very urgent because they give you a final date which you have to comply with. So always when a stakeholder is demanding something for you, you will look, okay, how urgent is the thing that he needs from me? How much power does he have over me? And how real is the demand he's asking from me? If it's a very unrealistic demand, of which you don't really agree with, then it's not very legitimate, and then you maybe do not agree with it and will not listen to his demand. So please remember, the rule of thumb here is if there are 2 out of 3 of those elements set in place, then you know that the stakeholder is important and should be prioritized. A question with that. In the pull framework, a stakeholder who demands immediate action from the company because they believe the company's pollution is directly harming their community would primarily score high in power, urgency, legitimacy, or influence. Okay, I see a lot of B. B, 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 B. Okay, very well. Immediate action. So it's very urgent. If you don't do something now, there will be more and more pollution. So it's very urgent. And power is not seen here. Maybe legitimate could also be the case because it is a real fair claim. But B here is obviously the best one for this question. Then here again, they were talking about the triple bottom line. So I quickly want to see if everyone remembers what it is. So please in the private chat, send me what 3 components the triple bottom line is made up of. Very curious if everyone remembered it and understands it. And I feel like this is the main premise of the entire course, so probably, okay. I do see some wrong answers actually. Okay, I see 2 different answers. Some people are saying ERS, ethics, responsibility, and sustainability. And some people are saying social, economic, environmental value. And that's the correct answer. The power, urgency, and legitimacy framework, that's not the triple bottom line. That's just the PUL framework to prioritize stakeholders. The triple bottom line only looks at sustainability. So let me check if I can write something. So you have ERS, the E of ethics, the R of responsibility, and the R of sustainability. And only the S of this is about the triple bottom line. And because the triple bottom line is again subdivided in the economy, the environment, and society. So the ERS is also about a sustainable organization, about having a long-term organization, but only the S specifically, which is about sustainability, is about the triple bottom line. Bottom line of people, planet, profit, economy, society, and environment. So please do not get those 2 differences mixed up with each other. Then the process of ethical management. First of all, you have to understand when you're evaluating a problem, if it's actually an ethical problem and not, for example, a legal problem. When you're getting a claim by a company because you polluted a river, it may at first sounds like an ethical problem, but if it's all that they want is just a bag of money because you've polluted their river, it's more of a legal problem and not really an ethical problem. But when you have identified that it's indeed an ethical problem, you can go to the second step, which is the one of understanding the behavior. So you should try to analyze the behavior that's been done here or that is currently being done within certain ethical frameworks. Can we, for example, use deontology or consequentialism to analyze the behavior that's present here? And the third one is about applying ethical tools. It's about using management tools to address and resolve ethical issues. But the third one is focused on how are we then solving this ethical problem. Then again, a practice question. During the process of ethical management, what is the first step a responsible manager should take when addressing an ethical problem? Apply ethical management tools to create a solution. Evaluate whether the issue is indeed an ethical problem or merely a business legal challenge. C, communicate the problem to stakeholders. Or D, measure the economic impact of resolving the issue. Okay, I see some different answers already. Interesting to see. Yeah, most people say B, and that's indeed correct. When we go back to the three steps, the first thing we do is trying to figure out, is this problem really an ethical problem? Is it not a business problem, a legal problem, or maybe a personal problem? I don't know. Is it really an ethical problem that we're trying to solve here? That's the first question we always ask ourselves. A is not true. A is the third step. So first we look, is it really an ethical problem? Then we go to understanding the behavior within deontology, consensualism, or any other ethical framework. And only then we go to the third step of applying ethical management tools. So the first one is always evaluating whether the issue is indeed an ethical problem or merely a business legal challenge. Okay, then we'll be going soon to the third lecture, and this is also the biggest lecture of the three with the most difficult theories. So I would shortly suggest that we have a 5 minute break again. So until about 5 minutes past one, then I will first talk a bit about the exam itself and my experiences of business administration exams at Dropout and how I believe you can best tackle those exams. And afterwards, we'll be going into the third lecture. So see you again at 5 minutes past one. Okay, I hope everyone is ready again. I see another question. Until which lecture is planned for this training? We have until 2:30, and until this lecture we'll be discussing. So after this lecture, we'll be going into practice questions of all different lectures we've discussed today. So unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all the lectures, mainly because the third lecture was, I think, about 2 weeks ago, and we also have time to process the lectures and create this material. So unfortunately, it's only about the first half of this course, of the entire Radboud course. But first, a bit about the exam. I've written some notes down. Because at Radboud, you will only be taking or mainly be taking multiple choice exams. If I'm thinking out loud, I believe I've had maybe 3 or 4 exams which are not just multiple choice throughout all my Radboud exams. So it's very important to understand a bit how to study for this. And first of all, the questions can get very specific. So make sure that you study those rows of things you have to learn, like those different concepts or those different steps in certain processes. Try to study those by heart. Because very frequently, there will be direct theoretical questions about those different rows of theories, questions, or whatever. So try to really remember those and study those. For me personally, what I've noticed is that professors really put a lot of attention in the exams on the lectures. So reading the books, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because 90% of what's in the book will not be examined. It will mainly be only what is discussed in the lectures. And especially because less and less people are going to the lectures and professors don't really like that, they're only putting more and more emphasis on those lectures to try to get you to the lecture rooms. So I even remember last year or 2 years ago, I had a course, Strategic Human Resource Management, with over 700 students, and only 20 people went to the lectures. So the professors didn't particularly like that. So because of that, their emphasis on the lectures got increased, and more increased. So try to make sure that you really understand the lectures by heart. And you can do this by studying the lecture slides or rewatching the lectures maybe because 2 weeks before the exam, the lecture recordings will be published, and you can watch all the lectures in the speed times two. So if that's something you're good at, maybe try that. And finally, what worked very well for me, and of course it's very easy to say because this is a training by Athena, but I generally always use the Athena summary. Those summaries, they summarize the entire literature, plus all the lectures and anything else that's said in the lectures, which you might miss because you haven't been to the lectures. So for me, that always worked. But of course, feel free to use any other method that works for you. I know that Synergy also has some summaries for sale. So maybe look into that if that's something you're interested in. But my number one advice really is don't read the books, but just really focus on the lectures, and you'll be perfectly fine for your first upcoming exams. If you have any questions regarding the exams, any scares you have, let me know, and I'll try to answer it as good as possible. Also, for example, the time constraint. I know that a lot of Dutch students had problems with it in high school when they had like mathematics exams or economics exams. Usually, there was a big time constraint. It was very difficult to finish the exam on time. But with the multiple choice exams, it really isn't. You usually have around 3 hours for the entire exam, sometimes two, for around 45 questions. So it's more than enough time to complete it. I see questions from someone. How much questions do you think this exam will have? Yeah, I would say usually between 30 to 45, max 60, but on average, almost all exams are around 45 questions. And it depends a bit per course. Sometimes you only need 55% of the answers correctly, but usually there's a gambling correction, a guess correction. So then you need around 67.5% of the answers correctly to get a passing mark. Then we go to the third lecture, the lecture about understanding the responsible organization. And here we'll go very much into depth into classical theories, also more critical theories, which have been used in management theory for a longer time. And the modes of management are here illustrated again. This specific lecture is zooming in on organizing, behaving, and following. So the first three modes of management are discussed into this part of the training and also this part of your exam. And we'll start with chapter 6, which was about organizing. First of all, the 3Ds. The 3Ds are a way of managing your task you have to do. If you have a bunch of tasks in front of you and you have to decide which one to do, you first start with decluttering. Decluttering means that you get rid of all the tasks that are unnecessary and which you don't have to do. So you remove all unnecessary items to improve focused and efficient. When you have decided upon which tasks to keep and which one to remove, you can go to delineating, which is about prioritizing them. Which task are you doing first and which one thereafter? Which one are more important? And a way of prioritizing is by using the Eisenhower matrix. We'll go more into depth of this in the next slide, but the Eisenhower matrix is about managing your task based upon urgency and importance. And when you have done those first two steps, you have decided which tasks to keep and which ones to get rid of, and you've decided which ones to do first, then you'll start with the delivering. You're executing the tasks based upon the prioritization you've already agreed on, and you make sure that you deliver those tasks in the right quality and the right time. Then the Eisenhower matrix. The Eisenhower matrix was for the second step of the 3Ds, the delineating, prioritization, and it's about the question, which task to do first. And we have two different skills we use for it, the one of urgency and importance. If the task is very urgent and very important, we have to do it now. We're getting into the one section. If it's still very urgent, but not so important, then we go to section 4. We delegate it. It's important, it's urgent, it has to be done, but it's not important, so I'm not wasting my time on it. I'm putting it off to someone else. If it's not urgent and also not important, which is section 3, then I will just dump it. If it's not important and also not urgent, why should I do it in the first place? I'll get rid of it. And then the second step, if it's very important but not urgent, I will have to do it, but not necessarily now. So I will decide when to do it. I will find the right moment on my calendar and put it down there. Then I will be doing this task. So I'll make sure that the important stuff is done, but first the urgent stuff. Then the Spotify model. The Spotify model is a model of collaboration within the organization that's very often used in big tech firms. A good example, of course, that got the name after is Spotify. And the Spotify model works in squad, tribes, chapters, and guilds. A squad is a self-managing team that has a specific mission. And the layer above a squad is a tribe. And a tribe are multiple squads working together on a related project. And even above a tribe, we have a chapter, which are members within a tribe who have the same function. For example, all members who are a treasurer or maybe a spokesperson, they are together in one chapter. And a guild is a bit loosely next to those squad, tribes, and chapters, which is a voluntary group created across multiple people of multiple tribes who have a shared expertise. Maybe all people who have a bit of legal expertise will form their own guilds and come together to discuss other things. And why do we work in this kind of models? It's a very flexible model in which people have the autonomy to work in the groups they want to work and the groups they belong to, while not having a very rigid hierarchy. So it's about flexibility, collaboration, and growth. And it sounds maybe a bit vague and complex, but just try to remember the words squad, tribe, chapter, and guild and understand more or less what it means. And understand that this is a model used in those tech firms who want to be very flexible and want to have this collaborative kind of environment. And I think you will be getting the main highlights of what it is. Then the normative documents. Normative documents are providing guidelines for serving society and planet without specific action plans for individual situations. For example, when you have a decision between A and B, and you have to make a decision on what to do, for example, between opting for a sustainable supplier or a cheaper, less eco-friendly option, then normative documents can be documents where certain rules or guidelines are written down on how to decide in these kind of dilemmas. Maybe it says in those dilemmas, in such documents, if the price is maximum 20% more than the non-sustainable one, then always choose for the sustainable one. Then you have a clear guideline to know, okay, until when point should I go for the sustainable one, and when should I go for the not sustainable one? So normative documents are really all about providing guidance to you to make the right decisions if you don't have the knowledge or expertise to know what you should do and what's best for the organization but also in this case for the planet and for the community. Then we go back to ERS, the ethics, responsibility, and sustainability. And this slide is mainly trying to highlight that ERS is not merely a thing for top management, but that ERS happens throughout all lines of the organization. It does in fact happen on the top level with the chief responsibility officers or chief sustainability officers, but it also happens completely at the bottom of the organization with operational employees. For example, maintenance workers who are directly contributing to social and environmental value creation. So when you see an exam question trying to claim it's only for top management, you should realize that it's false. ERS happens on all layers of the organization. Then the different types of performance related to ERS. We have ethics performance, meaning that we perform well on making the right decisions. We perform well on choosing between what's good and what's bad. Then we are performing well ethically. We're making constantly the right decisions on what's good. Then responsibility performance. That's that we know to take our responsibility, meaning we are making mistakes, but when we do so, we take the responsibility for it, that we're performing well on responsibility. And finally, sustainability performance is when we do well on both social, environmental, and economic value. So sustainability performance means that we are doing well in creating value for all three elements of the triple bottom line. And if you want to have a high performance organization, then we should do well on all three of those ERS elements and be performing high on all of those. Again, the question of the difference between responsibility and accountability. Accountability can be seen here as a synonym for responsibility, but usually within the course, the word responsibility has been used. So you could have read here responsibility performance. Then we have a practice question. So please read it again, and when you think the answer, send it in the chat. Okay, I see a lot of D, and that's indeed correct. A tip I would like to give here is that, in my experience, when all of the above is one of the answer options, very, very often, maybe 75 of the cases, all of the above is also the correct answer. So if you're contemplating between all of the above and another answer option, then you should definitely go for all of the above. Almost always the correct answer. Then, manager has to decide between focusing on a client complaint, urgent but less important, and working on a strategic project to improve the company's long-term sustainability, important but not urgent. Which tool would help them best to prioritize these tasks? Okay, see some different answers. Okay, and indeed, B is the correct answer here, the Eisenhower matrix. I also saw some people saying D, the A, the three Ds of management, decluttering, delineating, and delivering. This one is about getting rid of things that are necessary, then prioritizing, and then also delivering the tasks. So it's about more than just prioritizing. And the Eisenhower matrix is only about prioritizing and specifically based upon urgency and importance. So B is here the correct answer. And in this case, when it's urgent but less important, as you can see here, then we would decide for putting it down on other people, delegating it. And when it's important but not urgent, then we would decide for another moment to do so. That's the theory of the Eisenhower matrix. So that's the correct answer here. Then we'll be going to the seventh chapter, the chapter of behaving. Which is the second of three chapters of this lecture. First of all, we will talk a bit about motivation, because motivation is a very important topic within business administration, and motivation is about the reason why you are doing something. the reason why you are performing well, why you're performing bad, or any of those things. And motivation can be seen as part of a function of performance. Performance means how well you are doing in your organization. And it's a function of how well you are doing it, how good you are at it, your competence, times your motivation. For example, if I'm very smart and very good at math, my performance on my math test can be very high. But if I'm not putting in the hours to also practice with it, my performance on the math test will probably still be quite low. So my performance of the math test is dependent upon how smart I am, how good I am in my mathematics skills, times how motivated I am to learn it, how much willing I am to put in the hours to study for it and to practice it. So the performance is a function of both of those two components. Then the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a topic that comes back quite frequently throughout your studies. Maslow has outlined a theory of 5 levels, and he believes that in order to fulfill all your needs, you will be needing all lower needs to be fulfilled as well. So you will not be looking to fulfill your esteem needs as long as your physiological needs, your safety needs, and your love and belonging needs are not fulfilled. You need all the lower level needs to be fulfilled in order to have met the higher needs. So when I want to have fulfilled my self-actualization needs, I need all my lower needs to be fulfilled as well. So the lowest unmet need takes priority at any given time. And the hierarchy we have here is to start with the physiological needs, meaning that we need shelter, food, and just very basic needs that we all need to survive. If we have those, we can think a step further. We'll be looking for employment, health, or even personal security. And if you also have those, we are safe, we have safety needs. Then we go to love and belonging. We're looking for friendships, for family, for a connection to friends and peers. And then we go to esteem, meaning that you want to be recognized, you want to feel that people acknowledge us and get some status. And if you even have the esteem one, only then we can become self-actualized, meaning that we become the best person that we can possibly be. So the best, be the best of yourself. Then a question with that, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, an employee who has achieved a sense of belonging through the team collaboration, but now is seeking to be promoted for recognition, will be attempting to satisfy which level of needs? Okay, already some answers coming in. And also some different answers. Some people say A, some people say C, some even D. Okay, well, let's analyze this question. We see that an employee already has achieved a sense of belonging. If you look at the hierarchy, we can see that belonging is the 3rd level of the hierarchy. If you have achieved the level of belonging, then we can go to the higher need, which is esteem. Esteem will be the next need that we want to be fulfilled. And the question is exactly saying that. He is now seeking to be promoted for recognition. And recognition is exactly what esteem is all about. So because we have just achieved the love and belonging needs, we have the friendship and intimacy we need, we have the sense of belonging, that's why we can go to the higher need and are now seeking for the esteem need. Meaning that C was indeed the correct answer. Esteem needs, which are higher up in Maslow's hierarchy, involve recognition, status, and achievement. The employee seeking a promotion recognition is attempting to satisfy this level of need. Then you might be wondering, why is it not A? Because there's nothing explicitly mentioned about whether or not the physiological needs are met. Well, because an employee has already achieved the sense of belonging, we can assume that all needs below the love and belonging needs are also met. Because according to the theory, it's impossible to have met the love and belonging needs if you haven't met the safety needs and the physiological needs. So it's impossible that A will be the right answer. It can only be C. Then the Hertzberg motivation hygiene theory. Hertzberg has a theory based upon hygiene factors and motivational factors. And what this theory basically claims is that you need hygiene factors to not be dissatisfied, and you need motivational factors to get the satisfaction. For example, when I'm working in a factory, and my employer makes sure that there's enough daylight coming into the factory, the work conditions are good, the salary is high, then my basic needs are met, and I will not get dissatisfied. But does it automatically mean that I'm also satisfied? No. Because to become satisfied, you also need the motivational factors. You need growth, recognition, and a sense of intrinsic motivation, internal motivation to be actually satisfied. So the goal of an employer should be, first of all, not get you dissatisfied and have some hygiene factors. So have some good working conditions, high salaries, and just good conditions in which you perform the work. And the second step is they should try to also motivate you by having motivational factors, giving you growth, giving you recognition for your work, and just making sure that you're also intrinsically being rewarded for your work and not just extrinsically with hygiene factors. And we have a practice question with that. A company raises wages and improves working conditions for its employees, but still sees no noticeable increase in job satisfaction or performance. According to the Herzberg motivation hygiene theory, why might this be happening? Okay, let's see a little of B's. And indeed, that's the correct answer. The company is addressing the hygiene factors, but they are not addressing the motivational factors. So, while the employee might not be dissatisfied, he is not going to be satisfied. Okay, we go to the next slides. Theory X and theory I. That's the next kind of motivational theory developed by McGregor. Theory I assumes that employees are always lazy, and the only reason why they work is because they want to make money. And so when they can, they will always abuse the system, and they will make sure that they will just make as much money possible with the least effort possible. So according to this theory, it is very needed that there's always supervision and that employees are being supervised by a superior. And theory I claims that employees are in fact self-motivated. So employees do not need supervision, but they should be autonomous because they are seeking responsibility and they want to be innovative. So where theory X thinks that employees are lazy and just doing it for the money, theory I believes that people are actually doing their jobs because they want to and are self and intrinsically motivated. And McGregor believes that both theories could possibly explain behavior, but it depends a bit on the situation. Then the follow-up theory developed by a Japanese guy is theory Z. Theory Z claims that theory I is the correct theory, but also it should be more focused on the collective and the teamwork aspects. So it emphasizes strong relationships and teamworks and is modeled based upon Japanese management practices. So theory I says people are intrinsically motivated. They do something because they actually want to do it and they want to feel better. And theory Z says, okay, that's true, but we should put more focus on the collaborative part, on the community part and the collective part. And trust, loyalty, and teamwork are crucial words with the theory set. And here's another practice question with that. In a company operating under theory X management, employees are likely to. Okay, let's see some A, let's see some B. But B is indeed the correct answer. It's not A because the taking initiative and intrinsically motivated is about theory I. Theory I says people are not lazy, people want to do the work, people are motivated. And theory X says no, people don't want to do the work, they just want the money. And if they can, they will always abuse the system, so they need close supervision. So B is here the correct answer. Then the next question. A manager believes their employees are self-motivated and capable of setting their own goals, but they also emphasize teamwork and collective success. Which management theory are they likely applying? X, I, Z, or the Herzberg motivation hygiene theory? Okay, most people have gotten it correctly. Very good. By the way, in case I'm going too slow or fast through the questions, just send me a private message and I will adjust the pace a bit, depending upon what you need. Okay. Okay, I do see a few wrong answers. Some people are saying B. It is C, and that's especially because of the words teamwork and collective success. You can see theory Z is an addition of theory I, but with theory Z, it's also very important that people are doing it together. So the collective part and the teamwork part is very important with theory Z. Whereas theory I actually says no, people are intrinsically motivated to do the work autonomously. But theory I is more focused on people doing the work alone and being intrinsically motivated themselves by themselves. And theory Z is more directed towards the collective and teamwork part. Then some process theories of motivation, some additional classical theories we will be discussing. We have the self-determination theory, the expectancy theory, the goal-setting theory, and equity theory. And it's very important that you're able to keep those theories apart. First of all, the self-determination theory. This theory says that people are driven by a motivation from within, and this motivation is stronger than the extrinsic motivation like money, bonuses, what do you call it? Getting higher paid jobs, those kind of things, promotions. So the self-determination theory believes that people are motivated because their intrinsic motivation to do something good for themselves and to feel better is higher than the motivation to make money, the extrinsic motivation. And key elements here are autonomy, competence, and relationships. The expectancy theory says that the motivation to do a job is all based on expected outcomes. I might get an assignment to do for school, and I will make a decision whether or not to do that assignment based upon my expectation of the results of doing that assignment. If I believe that making that assignment won't benefit me, because I expect that it will not be good for me, I will not be doing the assignment. But if I believe that doing the assignment will be good for me and the outcome associated with it is good, then I will do the assignment. So the motivation is all based upon expected outcomes and the value I attach to those outcomes. So people will put in effort when they believe something will lead to results that they like. Then the goal setting theory, and the goal setting theory claims that we set goals at the beginning and our motivation is purely based upon achieving those goals. So maybe I achieved it, I will get a 9 for this exam. When I get a 9 for Introduction to Responsible Organization, then that's my goal, and I'm motivated because I'm working towards that goal. And that's the only reason why I'm motivated. And finally, the equity theory. The equity theory makes comparisons to others. And maybe my colleague is getting paid 10% more than me, so I believe it's also fair to do 10% less work. Or maybe I'm getting a higher reward, so I will put in extra effort because I see I'm getting better paid, so I also believe I should do more. So the equity theory is all about the comparison between your input and your output compared to the input of others and the output that they are receiving. And if you believe that input-output comparison is not in balance, then you will adjust your efforts. Can be higher, can be lower. Then we have a practice question with that, so please read the question and type me the answer when you know it. Okay, first answers are coming in. Okay. Most people are saying A, and that's in fact the wrong answer. It is answer B. The reason why this is the wrong answer is because the goal setting theory is saying that the only reason why I'm motivated to do something is because of the goal I've set for myself. But the expectancy theory is also related to goals. But the expectancy theory says I will be looking at what I will be achieving. And if that achievement, that outcome is good for me, and I believe it's worth it, then I will putting in the efforts. So it's about how they perceive the effort necessary to achieve those specific goals and the rewards that you get for it. If I know that to get my next promotion, which is a goal for me, I have to work very hard and it's not worth it for me, I think that the reward of the promotion is not worth the effort I have to put in, then according to the expectancy theory, I will not be likely to put in that effort. If it's also about the goal setting theory, then all that will be stated is that I have set the goal to be promoted, so I'm working to it. That's the goal setting theory. But the expectancy theory really zooms in on my perceptions of whether it's worth it to put in the effort and to try to achieve those goals and what the rewards are associated with that. Is it clear with everyone? You just type in the chat. Yes, you have A and are uncertain now. Okay, good. Then we'll be going to the next slide. The theories we just talked about, all those theories are very traditional management theories. But nowadays, we're going more and more towards more critical theories. One of those is the humanistic view of motivation. And the humanistic view says that we should look at employees as a person and that they are also there to fulfill themselves personally. So we're not just focusing anymore on efficiency and trying to improve efficiency, but also trying to do something good for the employees we have and seeing those employees we have as an end and not merely as a way to get there. So people are not just good for work, they're not the way to get there, but work is also good for the people. And the final goal here is to enhance dignity and just to create a better work experience for all. And humans have four main drivers of motivation according to this theory, according to this more critical theory. Namely, they want acquisition, they want to grow, they want to grow in their position. Defending, an organization should want to protect their market share. B, bonding, building friendships, meaning that people within your organization, the employees, are willing and wanting to make connections to your fellow colleagues, which should also be an outcome itself. And finally, understanding, people want to gain personal insights. They don't just want to work to finish the work, but they also actually want to learn something while doing it. And as you see, only the first two here are related to the business case, and the other two are related to the human aspect. Okay, then we'll be going to the next part, which is power. Power is a very important aspect as well within business studies, because power can be seen as the force that makes you do something to someone else what he would not have done otherwise. When a professor is making you write an exam, which you would not have written if the professor wouldn't ask you to do so, then the professor has power over you. When your parents ask you to clean up your plate after you're done with eating, if you would not have done that, if your parents would not have asked that, then that means that they have power over you. They are capable of making you do something that you would have otherwise not done. That's exactly what power is about. And with different types of power that I would like to discuss. We're going to have power over someone. In the case of the professor has power over you as the student. But you can also have power with someone. For example, two different organizations can collaborate together to keep the prices high, and together they have power with each other. The third one, power two, and that means that you have the power to achieve something, the power to do something. I might have the power to end this Zoom meeting. I can click on end meeting, so I have the power to create change, to do something with what I have. Roger says, do it. I'm afraid I can't because we have 50 more minutes to go. Within 15 minutes, I will do it. So those are the three differences between power over, power with, and power to. And Roger, you do have the power to end the meeting for yourself, but then not for everyone. But it's also a power you have to do something. Then the different types of power. We have legitimate power, coercive power, reward power, referent power, and expertise power. Legitimate power means that you have a certain power within a role. For example, your boss, he can tell you to do something because within his role, he has legitimate power to do that, to make you do something also which you would not have done otherwise. Coercive power is mainly based upon force. If someone is very strong, he might have the coercive power to make you do something for him because otherwise he would maybe punch you or do something physical to you. That's what coercive power is about. But also the police's coercive power. They're carrying a gun on the streets, so they could shoot everyone if they want to. So in that sense, they have coercive power. But also the police's legitimate power is also the role of the police is legitimate. So within their role, they also have the power. Then the third one, reward power. Reward power means that you have the power to give someone rewards. For example, the professor, he's able to give you a high grade for your presentation or your exam, which means that he has reward power. The fourth one, referent power, is all about charisma, which comes from personal attributes or being charismatic. Maybe you're liking a certain influencer you're following or a model on Instagram, and they are promoting a new product, and then you're buying it. Well, because you like them, you think they are charismatic, and because of that, you buy something. So they have power over you because of referent power. And finally, expertise power. You can think, for example, of a doctor. If you go to a doctor and you have something medically wrong with yourself, then he has the medical power to do so because he knows how to fix you or he knows what's wrong with you. So he has expertise power over you because of the knowledge that he holds that you don't hold. Then a practice question. A leader uses their personal charisma to inspire employees, while another leader uses their position of authority to enforce compliance. Which two types of power are these leaders using? Take your time and let me know what you think. Okay, I see a lot of D, and that's indeed correct. The leader in this case, he has the formal role within the organization, meaning it's legit. But at the same time, because he's inspiring you with his personal charisma, he's also using his reference power on you. Then the team process. When you are entering into a new team, for example, with a group project for university, you go through different stages of the team process. First of all, you start with the forming phase, which is the honeymoon phase where team members are excited, but not yet productive. You're getting to know each other, you're willing to start with the task you're having, but you're not yet very productive in doing so. In the next phase, you start having the first conflicts. Maybe you'll notice that multiple people are having different opinions on what direction to go to. So you have a conflict which arises on personalities that clash. But this is a normal part of growth because the next step is the norming phase. In this phase, you're getting to know each other a bit better and the conflicts are getting resolved. And this phase, the norms of collaboration are getting established. You know how to deal with each other, you know how to collaborate, you know how to informal to be, how formal to address each other. You just know how it works. So now you can finally be productive and start performing, which is the next step of the steps. Performing is when you are finally efficiently working and working towards your goals. However, in case conflicts happen again, it's very important to go back to the norming phase and try to re-establish the norms of collaboration to make sure that you keep performing on a high pace. And eventually, when the project is finished or handed in, we get to the adjourning phase. The team members go separate ways and new teams will be formulated for different projects and different things. We have another practice question for that. In the early stages of forming a new team, team members are polite but unsure of each other's role and how the team should function. Which stage of the team formation process is this management team most likely to be in? Okay, I see a lot of these. That's indeed correct. A very important rule of thumb you can take here is that the storming phase is where the conflict arises. So if you know that you're still before conflict, then you're still at the forming phase. If you know that you're after the conflict, so the conflict is already over, you know that you're at the norming phase or even further. So when you see a question like this, that you're even before conflict, you're new and unsure how to work with each other, but still polite, meaning you're before the conflict, then you should know that we're still at the forming phase. Okay. Then we go to the final chapter, which is about leading. And leading basically is a combination between followers and leaders. And the leading theory claims that follow and leading are two sides of the same coin. You cannot just simply say that you're a follower or a leader because it is interchangeable within those positions. In classic leadership theory and all the literature on leadership, we mainly only focus on leadership. And we ask ourselves, what is a good leader? How to be a leader? How to define leadership? But more and more critical leadership has arisen, also trying to look at the follower side. Okay, when are you following a leader, and how to be a good follower, and what is followership? And leading is then the combination of both of those two. It's a combination of leading and following in which you are working towards a shared goal. And it is very important that you can be both a leader and a follower at the same time. For example, when I'm in an organization, I'll be leading to my employees, but I'm following to the government. So you're not always in the same position, but you're constantly interchangeable in those roles. Even within an organization, I can be a manager and leading to my team members, but following to my upper management. And important here is that the dependency is always mutual. The leader is dependent upon the follower and vice versa. And of course, the sustainability course then wants to talk about professional following. And professional following means that you are not just following in a one-dimensional way, but you're trying to do so in an ethical, sustainable, and responsible way. So in an ERS way. That's what we call professional following. And it's very important to call something professional following. We need both ethical following as well as sustainable following and responsible following. So all three elements need to be present in order to call something professional following. An example here, for example, is WhatsApp. WhatsApp has shown how to do professional following with their end-to-end encryption. The US government, they have asked them many, many times to get rid of that encryption because of that encryption, WhatsApp is not able, or the American government is not able to read the WhatsApp messages of people. And the government really wants to see what people are talking about and to intervene when illegal stuff is happening. But even though WhatsApp is a follower of the government, they have taken their ethical and responsibility leadership towards their own employees and their customers and have decided to keep end-to-end encryption. That's a good example how WhatsApp is in those tension field between being a follower to the government and a leader to their people, and has decided to do so in a professional way by combining ethics, responsibility, and sustainability. Then we can have different types of followers, as you can see here in this diagram. And we have two different skills we want to use here. First of all, the one of critical versus uncritical followers. And the second one is between passive and active followers. Critical followers are the followers that are very critical towards the policies and are actually trying to challenge the leaders. And uncritical followers are not trying to do that. Active followers are actively doing what the leader wants and also doing more than what's expected, whereas passive leaders or passive followers are only doing the bare minimum and are only doing what the leader asks them to do. And if the leader doesn't ask anything from them, they're just doing absolutely nothing. Follower activism, it's good to know that engagement is for different levels, but also for two different sides. I can be very engaged to my work in a very negative way, meaning that I'm engaged to get rid of the leader, get rid of the CEO, but at that time, I'm very engaged in doing so. So we can have positive engagement, wanting to be a very good listener to the company and being very engaged and close to the company, versus being very engaged to the company in the sense that I want to get rid of the management and want to achieve change. And we have different levels of this engagement, from isolators to diehards. The isolators levels are totally not engaged at all. They have no interest in what's happening and don't really care. Whereas the diehards, they are fully committed. And it can either be to support the leader or to remove them. And the bystanders, participants, activists are levels in between them. For example, participants, if you're a participant, and sometimes you can maybe agree with the leader, sometimes you disagree, so you're like half fully engaged. But as a diehard, you're fully committed to achieve change, either positive or negative. Then we have a question with that. Which of the following is an example of engagement at the diehard level of follower engagement? So A, B, C, or D. Take some time to read it and let me know in the chat. Okay, most people say B, and that's very good. You understand what I tried to explain. Here you see a very good example of commitment on a very high level, but in a negative direction. They're very committed to get rid of the leader. So the commitment level is high, but not in the way that we would like as the organization. Then, different types of leadership styles. We're going in two different theories here. The first theory is the one of situational leadership. And this theory claims that a leader can change his leadership style dependent upon the emotional readiness of the follower. So in certain cases, I'm better in performing leadership style X, and in some cases, I'm better in leadership style performing I, purely depending upon the followers. So how they try to explain that is by this model. And they make a distinction between how willing someone is and how able someone is. When someone just enters the organization, they are both unable and unwilling. They do not want to do the job and they don't know how to do the job. So in this case, we will have to do telling. We have to give a high directive behavior, telling them what to do and how to do it because they don't want to do it and they simply don't know how to do it. But at some point, when time progresses, we become more and more willing to do so. We still are not very confident in our work and we do not know how to exactly do it. But now when we have met our colleagues and we're getting commitment to the organization, now we are willing to do the job. So at this point, we go to coaching or selling. We no longer just have to directly tell someone what to do, but we can give some supportive behavior along the way and pushing the person in the right direction. Because if we don't have a very strict directive approach anymore, he won't just simply free lift. No, he will actually do still the work because he's very willing to do so. Then we come to stage 3. At this stage, we are now finally able in our work, so we do know how to do it. But now all of a sudden, we're not willing anymore. So now we understand what we need to do, we know how to do, but now maybe become a bit boring for us or we don't like it anymore. So our willingness decreased. At this point, we no longer need any directive behavior, but only supportive behavior. We have no motivation anymore to tell people how to do it, but only tell them to do it. We support them like, hey, do this job, do that, simply because they are not willing anymore. And then the final stage is the delegating phase or the letting go phase. And this is the phase that any leader wants to be in. It's this phase in which people are both willing and able. They know how to do the job and they are willing to do the job. So in this case, we don't have to do anything anymore. No directive behavior, no supportive behavior, just letting go and let them do the job. It maybe sounds a bit complex, but the most important thing to remember here is the leadership of a leader is dependent upon the emotional readiness of the followers. So specific situations, a leader should have specific styles of leadership ready to perform. And this is a question about that. In Hersey and Blanker situational leadership model, which leadership style is most appropriate for a highly competent but unmotivated team member? I'm very curious if you've gotten this. It's quite a complex theory. Telling, selling, participating, or delegating. Okay. Very well. I see that most people are having the right answers. Still waiting for some more. Okay. See a lot of D. And let's first see why D is incorrect. We are delegating when we are letting go. And we only let go if someone is completely able in that job and completely willing in that job. We let go and we let them do completely the job in complete freedom if they are completely aware of how to do it and completely willing to do it. And here we see that the person is highly competent, but not very motivated. So we have to help them to do the job because if you don't help them, they're not doing the job, even though they know very well how to do the job. So we get in number C, participating. We're helping them, we're supporting them. So we are at this place of the graph. So I hope that's clear. And the reason why it's not selling is because if it was selling, then the person would have been unable, but motivated. Exactly the opposite of this. And if the person was unable and unmotivated, then it would be in the telling stage. So be very careful with reading this. Why not telling? We're telling people how to do it if we're here at the bottom right, which means that we're doing that only if they're unable and unwilling. They don't know how to do it and they don't want to do it. But we see in the question that they do know how to do it. They're highly competent, but they don't want to do it. They're unmotivated. So we don't need to tell them how to do it, but we only need to tell them to do it, which is the participating stage. Is that clear, Erva? Why we are in this part, the graph? Ah, perfect. And you can read the justification real quickly if you still have any doubts for it. And then we go to the second of the two models, which is Fiedler's contingency model. This one is very closely related to the situational leadership, but the distinction here is that Fiedler doesn't believe that the leader is capable of adjusting his style. Fiedler says a leader is always having a fixed certain leadership style, and which leader is good for which organization might differ. So organization A might be good for leader B, and organization B might be good for leader A. That can vary, but a leader is never able to change his style. So where the situational leadership style says we should change our leadership based upon certain phases we're in, Fiedler says, no, we cannot change our leadership style. We should change the leader based upon the organization. So we should find the right leader for the right organization. And if there's a mismatch, we cannot simply change the style. No, we have to change the actual person because the person is not able of adjusting his style. And then the question arises, okay, but how do we know if there's a fit between the leader and the organization? Well, we have to look at the quality of the relationship between leader and followers, the task structure, and the leadership position. To start with the first one, the quality of the relationship, if there is a very, very poor quality between the leader and the followers, then we are looking for a leader who has a very people-oriented leadership style, because the focus can be on people or on tasks. If the relationship is already very good, then we don't necessarily need a leader that's very people-oriented, but we can be a bit more task-oriented. The second one, the task structure. If the task structure of the job that has to be performed is very vague, then we need a very task-oriented leader, because the task is very important. If the task in an organization is completely clear, for example, in a factory, it's very clear what the job is, then we can have a more people-oriented leader. And finally, the leadership position, which is about how much power the leader has over the influence group. If the leader has a lot of power on the group, we can be more task-oriented. But if the leader only has minor power on his followers, very poor power, then it's better to have more people-oriented leadership to improve the power position of the leader. So those three elements decide whether we should have a leader more focused on tasks or a leader more focused on people. Then, what is the difference again? So, situational model is about leadership that's able to change. I am a leader and I'll adjust my leadership style based upon the people in my organization. If my people are very able or willing or not able or unwilling, well, based upon that, I'll decide what leadership style to have. But the contingency model says, no, that's not possible. I'm a leader and I have my own style, and I'm not able to change my style. So I should find a leader with the appropriate style for the appropriate organization. So those are the biggest differences between those two models. Then we'll have a question related to leadership. A manager in a software development firm adjusts their leadership style depending on the team's maturity and the complexity of the project they're working on. This approach is most closely related to situational leadership, contingency leadership, theory X, or Hertzberg motivation theories. And I'm seeing a lot of good answers coming in, so I like that. Very good. Okay, indeed, everyone, or almost everyone had A, and that's indeed situational leadership, because we're able to change our leadership style, so it cannot be B. Then this was already the entire theoretical part of this training. We will now also practice for half an hour extra with all these kind of theories we discussed throughout this 2 hours. So the next 30 minutes we'll be practicing, 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 and we will see if you remember everything correctly. Because of course it's very easy to have a question correctly if you just have a theory about it. But what about if the theory is already a bit further away? So I'm very curious how well you will be performing in the upcoming 30 minutes with the questions. But please first fill out this evaluation. So I know for myself how to improve. And hopefully you'll be a bit nice to me in the evaluation. So we'll take 5 minutes for that. And if enough people have filled it out, we can continue to the final part of this training. Yeah, the presentation will be published online as well. The slides will be shared after this training. Okay, if you haven't filled out the evaluation, please still do. So far, only 6 people have filled it out. But in the meantime, we will already be going to the practice questions. So please fill out the evaluations. And in the meantime, let's start practicing. Also, in case you haven't purchased the summary yet, but still would like to do so, you can still do it. And for the next 24 hours with a discount. There's no code on the screen, but I will send it in the group chat later. So in case you would like to do it, use the discount code for a little discount on the summary. Then the first practice question, which of the following examples best represents a company that has entered a state of moral bankruptcy? Will the practice questions be sent us afterwards? Yeah, we will be also sharing the questions in the group chat later. A company repeatedly exploits workers but continues to make high profits. A company fails to meet environmental regulations due to poor planning but commits to correcting it. A company underpays its employees, forcing them to work in unsafe conditions while being involved in a large bribery scandal that tarnishes its reputation permanently. Or D, a company that introduces sustainable products but is struggling to gain consumer trust. Take a few moments and let me know if you think you know the answer. Yeah, I see some C's and some A's. I will first explain why A is not correct. The moral bankruptcy really means that you completely lost your moral license to operate. You've made so many moral mistakes upon moral mistakes upon moral mistakes that you now are moral bankrupt. And A, it could be the case, but it's not bad enough to say that the company has completely lost its moral license to operate. But in the case of C, it's a very extreme example. And in that case, I would make the judgment that they are in fact losing their license to operate. So C is the correct answer, in which the company has done so many unethical things that they no longer can make up for it and are morally bankrupt. Then, a manager who strictly follows rules to avoid punishment without considering the broader ethical implications is likely operating at which level of moral development? Type it in the chat when you're ready. Very well. It's indeed pre-conventional. Pre-conventional, and you're still making judgments on punishment and rewards. Conventional, you're going to expectations of others. And principled or post-conventional, then you have your own moral compass. So A was the correct answer here. Then, a manager is preparing for a week of meetings and project deadlines. They decide to declutter their inbox, delineate which products need their immediate attention, and schedule time to ensure each task is delivered on time. Which concept are they implying? Okay, we'll see a lot of B. And that's indeed correct. I think even everyone was correct very well. Yesterday, a lot of students in the Dutch course had A, but you all recognize that B was indeed the correct answer because you see both decluttering, delineating, and delivering, all three elements, and not just delineating, because just delineating is about the Eisenhower matrix. But if you have all three together, they were talking about the 3Ds. Then, a manager at a tech firm prefers to grant autonomy to teams, allowing them to set their own goals and emphasizing collaboration. Which management theory is this manager most likely following? X, I, Z, or Hertzberg's? Okay, and try to put emphasis on collaboration. Is collaboration a big part of theory I or not? Okay, about half of the people were correct. It's indeed theory Z. And the reason for theory Z and not theory I, and theory I, it's also about autonomy, but not autonomy to teams, but autonomy of individuals. In theory I, we believe that workers want to be self-actualized, want to be intrinsically motivated to themselves. And theory Z builds upon this theory, saying, okay, this statement is true, but we don't say it's true for individuals. No, we want to emphasize it on a collective teamwork effort. So if you see the word teams and collaborations, you should immediately realize that it cannot be about I and it should be about Z. Then, a team in the norming stage of development is characterized by which of the following behaviors? High levels of conflict as a rule, as rules are unclear, strong cooperation and collaboration with clear rules, teams are still forming and members are hesitant to express opinions, or D, the team has achieved optimal performance with minimal intervention needed. Okay, very well. Here it's important to realize that the norming stage comes after the storming stage. In the storming stage, we have conflict and we are getting into arguments. And when those conflicts get resolved and we get the same norms and values and we know how to work together, then we can start to cooperate and collaborate with very clear defined rules. So indeed, B here is the correct answer. The reason why it's not D, as I see that some people answered D in the chat, D would be the case if we are one step further, the performing stage, which comes after the norming stage. Then, which type of follower is most likely to question the director of a leader, yet still contribute actively to team goals? Sheeple, yes people, alienated followers, or effective followers? And now I'm wondering if we discussed it, but I think we did. Okay. Here the correct answer is indeed effective followers. Effective followers are the followers who are being able and are able to give criticism to the followers, to the leader. But if they agree with the leader, they are following them very well. That's effective followers. If it was sheeple, then it would be a non-critical follower. Sheep don't follow, they don't just listen, they just follow the leader. They don't care about what they're doing, they're just following blindly the leader without asking any questions, but also very passively. Yes, people, they are very active in doing so. They take their own initiatives, but they're also very, very uncritical. Alienated followers, they are both uncritical, but they are critical, but also very passive. So they don't agree with the leader and they don't really follow them. And then the final one, effective followers. Those are the followers that are listening to the leader, but in case they don't agree with the leader, will also challenge the ideas of the leader. And that's the thing that you should want as a leader. You should want followers that can be critical towards you, give constructive feedback, but at the same time, if they agree with you, are very supportive. And the reason you don't just want sheeple or yes people, okay, they do listen to you very well, they walk behind you, but they are not critical at all. And you do need critical people in your organization. That's why effective followers are the most important part. Then, a tech company adopts a management model that encourages teams' autonomy, frequent cross-team communication, and fast adaptation to changes. This model most closely resembles bureaucratic structure, modular organization, Spotify model, or the hierarchical management. Okay, very well indeed. We're here talking about the Spotify model, which you work in squads, tribes, clusters, those things as we've discussed. Then we're going to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Which motivation factor would likely be most important for a newly hired low-income worker? Opportunities for self-actualization, achieving social recognition from peers, basic financial security and job stability, or personal growth and achievement? Okay, and indeed, it's C, basic financial security and job stability, because we are now still at this level of the hierarchy. We're a low-income worker, okay, so we do have water, air, shelter, and those kind of things. The lowest need is fulfilled, but since we are just starting our low-paid job, our second need is just getting started. So looking for good employment, good health, personal security, and of course, employment. So we are here in the hierarchy, and this is the correct answer. Then, which process theory of motivation would explain an employee's decision to work hard based on their belief that their efforts will lead to a promotion? Goal setting theory, expectancy theory, equity theory, or self-determination theory? Okay, I see a lot of B. And indeed, the expectancy theory is about my beliefs, expectations about the outcome. And if I think that outcome is something I want to have. If that's the case, I am motivated to do the job. So I think everyone got it correctly. So I will not further explain this. Then, John and Sarah are both software developers at the same company. John has noticed that despite working the same hours and contributing equally, Sarah receives more recognition and a higher bonus. Frustrated, John starts reducing his effort at work. Which motivation theory best explains John's behavior? Okay, very well. I see a lot of these. The equity theory is about equality. It's about comparing what I get, what I put in it, what I get out of it, and what someone else is putting in it, and what someone else is getting out of it. If I believe there's an imbalance between input and output for me compared to others, then according to the equity theory, there's a disbalance. So in this case, the equity theory fits best with John and Sarah's problem. Then those were all the questions we had for you today. More close to the exam, we were probably sharing some additional exam questions for you to practice, maybe also for the other course to help you further. But that's all for today. I would like to thank you very much for being here today. In case you have any practical questions, please send a text message to Job about our summaries or our trainings. If you have a more content-related question, feel always free to address me privately or in the group chat so that we can discuss it. Thank you very much and good luck with your upcoming exam. Bye bye.